Hello, welcome to our podcast. And today I have one of my longest standing friends. Michael, how long have we known each other? Like 30 years almost?
Probably 30, yeah.
Something like that, 25 anyway, for sure.
Yeah, we met each other when we were 10 years old.
So I met Michael in another life, another world, but Michael and I became friends. We've done some fun things together. We worked together trying to help a very interesting device and system for eating disorders. We worked in autism treatment, worked in not some Michael's impact on my life has been both professional and personal. He helped my daughter when she turned out to be on the autism spectrum. So, Michael, you're one of my dear friends. Just welcome to my podcast. I'm so happy to have you.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you online.
I know you're not that far away. You're like what, 20 minutes away. We should have done this face to face a little next time.
Yeah.
So, Michael, you know your background better than me. We talked about your traveling from being a lifeguard to cleaning rat cages. So I know you like all the way back, but and then to professor, it was probably like linear, right? Lifeguard, rat cleaning, professor at UCI.
It went exactly like that.
But your life's work is in sensory. I just put it as sensory stimulation. I think you call it environmental enrichment. But for our, by the way, this episode is special, so I highly recommend you stay to the end of it. All of them are good, but this one's going to be really good. So, Michael, let's give us a hint of what we're talking about today. So, what is environmental enrichment or sensory stimulation, as I call it? Like, what are we talking about here?
So it turns out that your brain needs a great deal of stimulation from the outside world in order to stay ha healthy. And most of us think that we get plenty of stimulation. You know, we have television, we've got music all around, we've got talking to people. But the one sense that we are deprived chronically in our affluent modern world is our odor sensing system, also called the olfactory system. And if you don't get enough olfactory stimulation, uh, the memory, cognitive parts of your brain start to deteriorate, as does the emotional part of your brain. So you're more vulnerable to getting depression and you're more vulnerable to losing your memory. And anytime you don't get enough olfactory stimulation, your memory goes. And that you can see that when people get older, their olfactory ability decreases. By the time you hit 60, it starts to fall off a table. And hand in hand with that, your ability to remember things also falls. And that's true for the rest of your life. So your ability to smell is closely tied to your ability to remember things. Even a chronically stuffed nose will cause both a loss of the ability to smell things and a loss of memory. And everything else that causes the loss of olfaction, sense of smell, also has that problem. So you talk to people who've had COVID-19, pretty much everybody. They had olfactory loss, the loss of the ability to smell, and they've had memory loss. And when researchers from Oxford University imaged their brains, looked to see what was going on inside, what they found is that the olfactory system was deteriorated months after people had recovered from mild COVID, and their memory was also deteriorating. And so people with long COVID have this prolonged problem. They have olfactory loss and they have memory loss as well. And pretty much every medical problem that you have, we've counted 157 of them. Uh, all the ones that you've heard of, from schizophrenia to cancer to heart disease to depression, all of them have olfactory loss and they have increased inflammation. And we think this is a critical part of what's going on now. And if you just, you know, everybody is chronically deprived of olfactory stimulation in their daily lives. If everybody takes a deep breath now, my guess is that nobody will smell anything.
Yep, I just
And
died
it
and nothing happened. So yeah.
And you know, the human brain evolved at a time when there was plenty of odors. In fact, nobody ever took a shower, ever. And so the human brain was evolved to have association with a great deal of olfactory stimulation, and now we're not getting very much at all. Coupled with, you know, a large number of medications interfere with olfaction. Um, Stress, even stress when you're a child, can affect your ability to smell things when you're an adult. Um, there are just many problems that are associated with olfactory loss and increased inflammation. And we're starting to treat that in a very effective way. When people lose their memory as they get older, and if you ask anybody over 60, they will talk about the problems with memory. Um, what happens is that their ability to smell things declines. But if you give them olfactory enrichment, a lot of olfactory stimulation, you can get them to have a dramatic increase in their ability to remember things.
So there's so much to unpack there. And so I'll try to come back to that, what you just said a minute
Okay.
ago. Because I'd like to talk more about the reversal versus just slowing, which is exciting. But before I get there, so when I first met you, we talked about other kinds of sensory stimulation. So like visual,
Right.
auditory, tactile, as well as olfactory and taste. We didn't talk about taste much, but I'm sure that's one of it too. But I think over time, even since I've known you, the focus on the smell just seemed to be more and more primary. Is that a good summary of your life's work?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, I think most people find it surprising because they consider the olfactory system to be their least important sense, right? If you ask people which sense they would be willing to give up, almost everybody says it's my olfactory system. They think it's just a nice thing to, determine whether the wine you're drinking is a good wine. But in fact, the central importance of olfactory stimulation to the health of your brain is really not generally appreciated.
Yeah.
And because of that, people are now going through their lives without much olfactory stimulation, and their brain starts deteriorating and making it much more vulnerable to all sorts of other neurological and somatic disorders.
So before I go back to some of the questions we pre-planned, I remember talking about, and do I remember this correctly, that back in your earlier days, you would, give rats stimulation, cut them up, and, all of a sudden look at their brains more deeply, and suddenly the ones that had much more stimulation actually had bigger brains. Is that true, or do I remembering that correctly? Or was it more
Uh,
synapses? What was it that you found when you were in the earlier phases?
So what we were looking at is early learning, and it turns out that human infants learn to be attracted to the odor of their mother or any other odor that you put in contact with them on the first day of life. When they just come out, this is the first thing that they learn about the world, and it's a very powerful kind of learning, and it does change their brain. There are anatomical changes, there are neurophysiological, electric changes. There are neurotransmitter changes, and there are behavioral changes. So on the second day of life, you can test them, these human newborns, and they remember the odor of their mother and they're attracted to it. And this is, we think, the first basis for the maternal infant bond.
Wow, amazing. So, our environment you mentioned has changed radically. So has the brain changed too over time, evolutionary? Is there any
Yeah.
evidence to that?
So in our modern affluent world, we just don't get much olfactory stimulation, and because of that, we are very vulnerable to neurological disorders and somatic disorders as well. And we think this is a complicated interaction between an increase in inflammation that occurs in the brain and the body without olfactory stimulation. One of the things that we found is that, and others, hundreds of others have found, is that pleasant odors actually decrease inflammation. And inflammation, as you know, is underlies many of the destructive forces that go on in the brain and the body. And so we think that everybody needs it. And what we're finding is that people, we'll talk about our device in a moment, but what we're finding is that not only older adults, but middle-aged and younger adults are also really interested in this because everybody wants to have a sharp mind. And it turns out this will help people, we think, throughout their lives.
That's amazing. And so we've talked about people being sensory deprived. I have to give a personal comment here. So, and I don't think I've ever told you this part, Michael. I have both a deviated septum and chronic allergies. And so, I've taken like Claritin, I've taken Zyrtec, I've taken different things, and I finally started using the nasal steroid with the allergy spray, with the pill, and now I can breathe and smell better. It's like it took that much firepower, which stinks, but I can
Yeah.
smell things now. My wife is laughing at me because Claire will tell me, like, you smell everything. I'm like, I have to. Michael says I have to. But I am experiencing the world different because I was chronically congested in one form or another for years. And,
Yeah.
I wasn't completely congested, but my sense of smell has finally changed as a result of all that. And like the neti pot helped a little, but all those things, when I found out I could do the steroid and the antihistamine at the same time without, dying, it's been life changing for me, honestly. It
Yeah.
really has.
Yeah.
And so it's good to know.
And and it may preserve your brain as you get older.
Yeah. So I have to share something with our audience here. I still have the Michael, my little vials, and she may recognize some of these. So when I had COVID, I called Michael because I know about this, and I said, Michael, they say wait for 6 months before you get sensory stimulation. How long should I wait? I'm assuming not at all. He's like, go to Amazon now and buy, what was it, rose, lemon, sage, and something else. I forget. But anyway, so I bought them and I still, oh, close. So I have them still. And I have like other ones that we've sort of through, including strawberry, if you remember strawberry, maybe talk about that later. So it's really amazing how there's something calming about it. And it's not, psychotropic, I don't think, but it's just
Yeah.
such an immediate rush of, um, I don't know, emotion. Like what is behind this? And it's like people
So,
confuse this with aromatherapy, which is kind of
right.
related, but not the same thing.
So I think over the course of evolution, the brain needs a great deal of olfactory stimulation. And in order to make sure that people get enough olfactory stimulation, it made us attracted to pleasant odors. And so we get a real rush and a feeling of relaxation and pleasantness. And we're attracted to these pleasant odors. And in fact, you have a reflex that when you smell pleasant odors, you automatically start to sniff it without thinking. It's a real reflex. And when you're exposed to unpleasant odors, the brain stops you from breathing immediately.
Wow, that's cool. So we're going to talk about two things I think in detail today. I'd like to talk about autism in a little bit because I think that's really important. And that's also some new stuff that's coming up. But the device is called Memory Air. So let's start there. And so, Michael and I, by the way, pitched a show to Hollywood, and we had an agent, we had an attorney, and we actually got to meet with 20th Television. And we were close, Michael. We were really close. Someday we'll do that again.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the evidence about olfactory. You've talked about some broad things, but talk about some of the clinical evidence about olfactory enrichment, along with, let's start with maybe brain health overall, and then talk about memory.
So, so I think I'll start with the fact that lab animals are kept in a standard box cage alone with not much to do and very little stimulation. And so these animals, they look okay, they can learn, they can remember, they have motor skills, they have social interactions are normal. But if you take these rats from a stand or mice from a standard box cage and you put them in a much bigger enclosure with plenty of friends and plenty of things to do, what happens is that their brains become much more complex and much more capable. They can learn better, they can remember better, they can have better motor skills. Everything about their behavior is improved. Even more impressive is the fact that scientists have made animal models of human neurological disorders, every neurological disorder you can think of. And what makes them a good model is that they have human type symptoms, just like humans have. And it turns out that they can express these human type symptoms of neurological disorders when they're in the standard box cage. That is, when they have very little stimulation in their lives. But when you put them in an enriched environment, bigger place, many more friends, many things to do, they lose many or all of their neurological symptoms. It's so powerful that a rat who's injected with the neurotoxin lead has better cognitive ability than a rat who has not been injected with any toxin, but is living in a standard cage. So if you have the toxin in an enriched environment, you have very little problems cognitively. If you're getting that toxin and you're in a standard little stimulation cage, you have a great deal of cognitive loss. And so
Wow.
we thought maybe this would benefit children who have autism. And there's actually a situation in Romania that with human children that sort of prompted our interest in autism. That is during the regime of Nicolae Ceausescu, the dictator who ruled Romania for many years. He decided that his country needed more people in it. And so he banned all contraceptives in the country. And he also ruined the economy, not surprisingly. And so what happens is that people had a lot of children, but no money. And so they had to bring them to the state orphanages. And in the state orphanage, they didn't have much money either. And so these children were put in cages, alone,
I
isolated,
know.
just like the rats in the laboratory. And when they came out of the orphanages, rather than 1 or 2% having autism, about a third of them had autism symptoms. We think because they were living under these restricted sensory stimuli in these orphanages. And when they gave some of these children to full-time foster care parents, that is, they paid them full-time to just take care of the babies. So they now had an enriched environment. They lost many or all of their autism symptoms. And so what we did was we tried to duplicate this with children who had autism here in Irvine. And we gave the parents a kit that had many odors in it, but we also gave them, just to cover our bases, we gave them visual stimulation, auditory stimulation, motor stimulation, and tactile stimulation. And we gave this to individuals or had a control group. And after 6 months, 42% of them had a major improvement in their symptoms compared to 7% who had a major improvement on standard care. And standard care in Irvine, as you know, is very elaborate and very expensive, but it doesn't do very much for the children. And so we did that. We've also found an 8-point increase in IQ compared to almost nothing in standard care. Increase in receptive language. They had a significant improvement in their abnormal responses to sensory stimuli. And after 6 months, 21% of these seriously affected children were no longer considered to be have classic autism, compared to 0% who were on standard care. So we went on to do a bunch of other studies, and one of the parents was so impressed by the benefits that occurred when his child was on it that he formed a company and developed it to be uh, presented to people all around the world. It's called Mendability, and people are using it all over the world and are having really nice benefits from it. So we think this is a really good way to treat children with autism, and we think this um, can even be improved further by just giving them olfactory enrichment. And we now have a device where we think we can do this without any effort. It's
So before we move away from that and start talking
Yeah,
about the memory loss, so my what I mentioned earlier, Michael's been a very big part of my personal life. My daughter, when she was born, or not born, but a few years after being born, began showing signs of the autism spectrum, and our world just collapsed. Like it was just the most awful thing. And she had not been that way at first and started demonstrating these signs around 2, which I think is pretty classic. But Michael introduced me to the therapist that sort of innovated this. And the amazing thing, I'll do a 2 or 3 year story, condense it down here. But, the idea of like scents like strawberry and then touching her face, there was something about doing that at the same time, which did take a little effort. It was just the first time we did it, her eyes rolled in the back of her head. She was the happiest she'd been in months. It was amazing just to watch this. And so we did that with her for years, as long as she allowed us to. She stopped allowing us to when she got a little older. But, she's a senior in college. She's about to graduate. She still has challenges, but she's wild. Her trajectory of her life is wildly better than it would have been without this.
yeah.
And you could offer me $10 million, Michael, and but not exposed her to this, and I wouldn't take it, right? I wouldn't
Yeah.
go back and roll the dice and hope it all turns out okay.
And we hear these stories over and over again. It just really revolutionizes the way that these children develop and alters the course of their life.
For sure.
And it's really important that people know about this because standard care, it takes you months, maybe a year. I've actually heard of 2 years before you can get a diagnosis. And then you have to fight with school systems and insurance companies in order to get it funded. And then, the data from standard care really comes from universities, but most people don't get it from universities. They get it from private companies that are just doing this and hiring people who may or not be particularly good. So the outcomes are not particularly good, and people really don't have the way to make it even better. And the standard care is also focused just on social interactions, whereas the enrichment strategy deals with all their auxiliary symptoms, which can be as serious as the social interaction problems.
Yeah, so I'll give the amateur hour viewpoint on this, Michael. We decided to do all kinds of different sensory stimulations. So we put her in OT, PT, we had her do vision therapy. But I would say all those things were helpful. Like learning classes, all those things. I took her ice skating and or skating when she hated it. I took her, bike riding, all these things, swimming, which is a good one. But I still feel like this olfactory stimulation with the tactile touch that was like the core of all of it. And so I think it's all valuable. We skipped the school program entirely because they wanted to put her, that's another story just for our listeners. They wanted to put her in special ed because she was sort of the star kid for her of her class. And, I insisted on putting her to regular school and we just skipped the whole public school thing. And I'm not endorsing this. I'm just telling you my story. And they told us that, oh, your kid will be back here and she's going to be a mess. Don't do that. We put her to a private school. And then about 2 years later, one of those same teachers said, oh my God, you made the right decision. It's like, so anyway, so that's something worth exploring. And by the way, if you're listening to this on the streaming service, you can go to healthcaresuccess.com and search for this podcast. Michael, at the end of this, you need to give me links to science and for both autism and memory that I can put on the show notes,
Sure.
which should be really helpful. So don't forget, because it's really important. I like to make these episodes as meaningful and meaty and not just listening to me and hearing us talk about this, but getting some proof would be awesome.
Yeah.
So you'll be able to get that. So I shared a very personal story there, but like I said, I wouldn't, for millions of dollars, I wouldn't just spin the bottle and avoid doing this.
Yeah.
It was immediately impactful. So, I recommend it highly. I've recommended multiple people to do this. And, hopefully it's so simple. And this little bottle of strawberry is one of those left over from those days. I still have it. It's a good deal. It still has like maybe 25% left. It goes slowly. So anyway, so let's talk about memory. So obviously the show is really today about memory, and we've got another half hour, so I'm going to spend some time on this topic because it's so important. Um, so memory, like obviously, so autism is something to look at for this. There's other things you can as well. And this little bottle, like in theory, you could take this little bottle and smell it, multiple times a day and get probably presumably the same result. It's just nobody does that, right? And what we did was we took the little bottle, we'd smell it, we'd put like on a piece of tissue and whatever. But so the device, which we'll talk about in a moment, is a way of doing that passively, like you just mentioned, which is great because humans is no matter how motivated they are, they're horrible at following through, Michael, and I think you know that, right?
Yeah. So a really wonderful development is a study that came out of South Korea that used olfactory stimulation to increase the memory of people who have dementia, Alzheimer's disease. And people have tried all kinds of things to treat Alzheimer's disease. Billions of dollars have been spent, hundreds of clinical trials have been spent. And the latest anti-Alzheimer's drugs are really ineffective. So they just tiny slowing of of decline in memory, but nothing you would notice. And it's very expensive. It's unsafe. They have brain bleeds and brain shrinkage and death. And it's very hard to get. You have to go to the hospital and have infusions. And so it's the worst of all worlds. Here you have something that's highly effective. On 5 tests of memory, the improvements were up to 300% better than controls. In addition, the depression symptoms were relieved by 325%. And these individuals had these kind of improvements within 15 days. It's just the most dramatic thing you can imagine. The problem is, in order to get these kind of improvements, they had to give them 40 odors twice a day. And of course, nobody will do that. Uh, and I mean, people won't even take a low dose aspirin after they've had a heart attack. So what we did was devise a device. We call it Memory Air. Sits on your nightstand and puts out 40 pleasant odors twice a night. And we found that this is going to, I think, revolutionize the way that Alzheimer's disease is treated. And I think it's also going to be something that older adults who are losing their memory, like all older adults, are also going to be interested in it. What we're also finding is that people in their 40s and 50s are interested in it and have ordered it because they want to keep their mind sharp because they realize that it's a winner take all economic system now, and they really want to be on their toes. And so this is really, I think, going to be something that, so we think people are chronically deprived of olfactory stimulation throughout their lives, and throughout their lives, giving themselves what we call olfactory enrichment, 40 odors twice a night, is going to keep their brain healthy, not just for memory, but also for emotion, depression symptoms. Again, the olfactory system has the only dedicated superhighway access to the memory centers of the brain and the emotional centers of the brain. All the other senses have to go through the brain's side streets and consequently don't have much impact or as much impact as the olfactory system. And so throughout life, we think that everybody is going to need much more olfactory stimulation that they're getting. And our device called Memory Air is something that I think can provide that. And in fact, a couple of weeks ago, Time Magazine named us as the invention of the year in health and wellness for the year 2025. So they recognized how exciting this is. We've also received an award from the American Psychological Association for our work with autism, again, using olfactory and other stimuli to normalize the brain.
That's amazing. So again, I love all those links. Give me as many links as you want, Michael. I'll put them on there so people can get
Okay.
this stuff for themselves. Um, so let's talk. I mean, I don't know, like both data maybe that you've seen or just the anecdotes so far, because the device has been gone through what, alpha, beta, I don't know, there are lots of different development
Right.
stages. It turns out building a device from scratch from engineering is a lot harder than most people think. You guys, I just in full disclosure, I'm a minority investor in this product. I couldn't possibly let it go after working with Michael for all these years and just like watch it go by. It'd be like FOMO, like, no, I have to invest a little in this. But we've been talking about this now for 3 or 4 years, right? And to various stages of engineering. It's a lot to build a device that actually works
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Devices are really complicated. And it's not just a device, it's a device that has to have a disposable. And so every month you get a new odor belt with 40 odors in it, and you put it in because it uses up the odors over the course of the month. And so all these things have to be developed individually, and every little part matters. It's like, um, you're building a real thing. You're not just talking about stuff, and it's not one molecule. It's complicated in a dozen ways, maybe several dozen ways.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's taken years for us to get it to the point where we can manufacture it. Manufacturing is a whole other thing. Uh, you know, we we had to, I mean, we tried using people in America, that didn't work out. We tried using people in China, that didn't work out. We finally found groups, three groups in Malaysia, and they're doing an outstanding job. And, we really, but we had to really search to find the exact people who will take this seriously and are competent enough to do it exactly right. Because if you get it just off by a little bit, it's useless, right? You
Wow.
just can't use it.
Wow.
So it took a while for us to figure it out. We finally hired a group of engineers. They were former senior Apple designers and engineers. And so they made a beautiful and very functional and very manufacturable device. And so we're really happy with how it all came out.
That's awesome. I'm really glad to hear that. So back to the evidence part of it. We talked a little bit about evidence just broadly with olfactory. So I don't know if you have anything you want to share about that or just some of the anecdotes, because I think we're going to do clinical trials eventually, right? But
Yeah.
any evidence you can talk now about early returns on this or just broadly with
Oh, all
Alzheimer's and
sorts of
memory
things.
loss?
So, one fellow has Parkinson's disease, and about half the people with Parkinson's develop dementia. And after 4 months or 6 months on the device, he took a memory test at the beginning, and after 6 months, and he more than doubled his memory score within 6 months.
Wow.
So that's pretty amazing. And people with Parkinson's have olfactory loss and they have increased inflammation and the whole song and dance. Another person,
Does it help with other
professor.
symptoms? Has it helped with any of his other symptoms on with Parkinson's yet or no?
So yeah, all the non-motor symptoms were improved. So depressive symptoms, uh, uh, coordination, all those things improved. Uh, there's no evidence that it improves the motor symptoms as yet.
Okay.
Um, Another person who said her husband always had to complete her sentences because she couldn't remember the word.
No.
Uh, After a month using Memory Air, he said to her, I haven't been having to complete your sentences since you started using this thing. So, that's good. She also said that she was also very clumsy. So she would drop like a vitamin pill or a spoon every day. She would drop something. And since using this, she said she hasn't dropped anything.
Wow.
So there turns out to be a direct connection between the olfactory system and the part of the brain, the cerebellum, that controls motor coordination. And we think that what we're doing is making that normalized and healthy again.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, it's just a lot of very positive comments from people who've tried using it. People are sleeping much better. They report on average 22 minutes extra sleep, which is enormous. And we think this is actually something that may turn out to be really important. So as people get older, their deep sleep diminishes. And in many older adults, there just isn't very much deep sleep at all or no deep sleep at all. And what's important about that is that during deep sleep, that's when your brain washes out all of the the waste that's accumulated, all of the toxic elements that have been generated by the neurons are washed out over the course of deep sleep. It's called the glymphatic system. And it pushes it all out to the front of the brain and through the holes in the skull that the olfactory system comes into. So the olfactory system is in your nose. It goes through these holes in the brain into your brain, the nerves that mediate this point. And so if you have a strong system that pushes this stuff out during deep sleep, you can get rid of all of these toxins and irritants and oxidative materials. But what happens is that when people get older, you don't have this washout because the olfactory system is blocking the way. And unless you have a very strong push to the system to get it out of these holes, it doesn't get out of the brain. And so you're marinating the olfactory system in a great deal of toxins and damaging elements and all the waste that's in the brain. And what happens is that that triggers inflammation. And inflammation, we now find, is accompanies more than 139 medical disorders, both neurological and somatic. So we think what happens, and we have to test this, of course, is that these uh, many medical disorders actually impair the function of the glymphatic system. And so it can't push out all of the waste. And so the brain starts marinating in its own waste.
Wow.
And we think that's why all of these disorders have olfactory dysfunction, because it increases the inflammation that damages the olfactory system and prevents the brain from getting rid of the waste. And we think this is going to be a really important mechanism for understanding what's going on.
Wow, that's amazing. So the and it's funny too because I could see I remember there's been times when you said, well, I'd like to believe that, but the scientist to me doesn't, right? And so we have, some of my people are scientists, right? I have researchers and we have executives and all that too, but we also have doctors and scientists and people who listen to this. So what would you say to them if they're super skeptical? Like how would you where would you direct them? Obviously, like I said, I'll have some research in the show notes, but anything
So
else?
there's just an enormous literature. So there are now 11 major epidemiological studies showing that by midlife, your all-cause mortality, whether you die for any reason, can be accurately predicted by your ability to smell things. All
Wow.
right. I'm sure nobody knows that. Uh, and there are now about 20 studies showing that if you increase olfactory stimulation, and not just one odor, it's multiple odors that are the critical thing here. Aromatherapy, they figure one odor is going to be make you this or make you that, depending on the different odors. The critical thing here is the multiplicity of odors because that's what stimulates your brain the best way. Um, there are now about 20 studies showing that you improve either memory and or the memory, the parts of the brain that control memory. So it's not just a single study or a couple of studies. It's a massive literature that all says the same thing. The loss of olfaction damages the brain, and the provision of increased olfactory stimulation increases the health of the brain.
So, our podcast is really, and I gave myself permission, right, when I started the podcast. I talk about being innovation in marketing in healthcare. And so we've certainly talked about some of the innovation side of this. And I know you're not really handling the marketing, but you guys are already selling these, right? There's a lot of demand. Any comments on the
Yeah.
marketing at all? I know it's not your area of expertise, but just curious what your
It's
thoughts
not my area of
are.
expertise, but we've sold out our first shipment. We've got another 10,000 coming on a boat. And we sold out the first group without any uh, advertisements. But there's been massive interest in this. There have been over 200 uh, media stories around the world, podcast, TV, radio, newspapers, magazines, online, everything. And so people are just really interested in it. And I'm fascinated by the fact that they're fascinated by it. Because you never know, as you know, with um, new ideas, they often get ignored, or people just are so skeptical that they won't even consider them. But what we're finding here is that people are just really drawn to this idea, and they're not skeptical. They're really something about it just hits home with them, and so I think it's going to be relatively easy to do the marketing. Although,
Yeah, I think
since I don't do it.
yeah. Our mutual friend does, Alan.
Yes.
So I would say that our experience together working on the device and program for eating disorders, like, and Michael and I spend a lot of time with this. Well, we get some positive science, nobody cares. Or the journalistic way is, well, I remember when I first got involved with that, they just had a positive story in the Wall Street Journal. And then the next day they interviewed 10 people that said exactly the opposite. So this idea of balance, and everybody just goes, well, who knows? And we were
Right.
talking offline today that today, the CDC reopened this autism vaccine thing. Like that's like just shocking to me. So there's so much confusion and misinformation out there And then, the work we do with autism too, it's really hard. But I guess in this particular thing we're talking about here, it's like, what's the downside? You're smelling a bunch of pleasant smells at night, right? Like it's like, and it's a
Yeah.
passive.
Yeah,
So
but there's something else. There's something that I think there are some ideas that people just go, yes, that makes sense to me. And this is one of them. The other things that you've described, people go, well, who knows? Maybe yes, maybe no. I mean, we literally have the only effective treatment for anorexia, bulimia, binge eating disorder, and obesity, even obesity in children. And
decades
people just
later,
go,
yeah, decades later
right.
after we worked on that, right? Decades later, it's still
Yep.
not here. So
Right.
the that is one of my most really frustrating things professionally, but at least I got to invest in memory air. So as we're wrapping up here, like so it's a belt, multiple odors. Like, what does it cost to buy it? What's the monthly thing? How do I buy it? Like, tell me about that, just because there's got to be
So
something.
you go to memoryair.com. That's the only place you can get it at this point. Only in the United States. We don't have the ability to provide it elsewhere. You buy the device for $7.99, and every month you get a new odorant belt that is $39, and it's shipped automatically. You don't have to do anything. And when you get it for the first time, you put the odorant belt in, you press a button when you go to sleep, and after a delay, it will go on and will go on at that time forever. You just get a new belt every month because it uses up the odors, and you put it in, close the door, and go to sleep, and that's it.
That's amazing. And I remember the trials and tribulations of getting to do it that easily. As we said, it's not an easy road. Don't let anybody kid you. It can be a challenge. So and I'm sure that's going to change in terms of where it's available, but right now it's at memoryair.com. And I'm really excited about this. It's just one of those things. I get opportunities to invest in things, reasonably frequently, and this is one of the very few that I did that versus just the usual stock stuff. But I'm, emotionally involved. I believe in the idea, and obviously I believe in the science. And by the way, I did a terrible job of setting this up. I didn't even tell them about your background at with UCI and your professorship and your years of science. But I'll put that in the show notes too. So make sure you give me a copy of your bio.
Okay,
So
so
people,
Alan will always introduce me by saying I'm one of according to a survey from Stanford University Medical School, I'm ranked among the top 1% of scientists in the world.
that's pretty good.
Yeah.
So you're not just selling
So,
stuff. You're not just selling stuff at the carnival. So that's comforting for
right.
me to know. Anything else? We covered a lot, Michael, today in this time. Anything else we missed about data, about evidence, about the breakthrough, or maybe the application to other diseases? Anything else you want to share as we wrap up here today?
So yeah, I think the thing that surprised me most is how many people who aren't older adults are interested in and have ordered one. That is people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s uh, who are not quite biohackers, but they just want that extra help with their brain. And I think everybody realizes that that's something that they want.
So, assuming
Uh,
somebody's got a spouse or partner, is the machine strong enough to help benefit both of them? They have to buy two devices.
I would recommend that they buy two devices because the throw is about 4 feet.
Yeah.
And unless you sleep on a single bed, that's probably not going to work for both of you. But if you can afford it, I think two would be optimal on each side of the bed. We have one of these California king beds where, it's miles between us.
Uh,
And so we have two of them, and that works out really well.
well, I'm gonna go switch to a twin so I can just buy one and be cheap. Not really. All right, Michael.
Okay.
It's been fun talking to you. Congratulations. It must be really exciting to have your life's work. I mean, you've worked around the edges of this for your whole life, right? And to
Yeah.
see this come together as something that people can actually use is must be exciting for you.
Yeah. It's
All right.
it's a real pleasure to see it come together.
Awesome. Thank you.